We're going to go ahead and get started with our next speakers here. Our next session explores one of the most pressing and complex challenges of our time, and that is how to secure both our food systems and our water resources in an era increasingly shaped by artificial intelligence, and we've talked some about that, and rapid technology growth. As demand for data, energy, and infrastructure accelerates, so too does the strain on the natural resources that agriculture depends on. But within that challenge lies some opportunity. The opportunity to rethink how and where we grow food, how we use water, and how innovation can help us do both more efficiently and more sustainably.
So to guide us through that conversation, we are joined by two leaders at the forefront of reimagining agriculture for the future. Dennis Levine, founder and CEO of Water Garden Farms, brings decades of experience from global finance and investing to the challenge of building climate-resilient food systems. Through Water Garden Farms, he's pioneering fully automated indoor smart farms that integrate cutting-edge AI, logistics, and sustainability to produce high-quality food with dramatically reduced resource use. Alongside him is Bertrand Deleuze, Chief Financial Officer of Water Garden Farms, who brings more than 25 years of experience in global investment, infrastructure development, and sustainable finance. His work spans billions of dollars in transactions and renewable energy projects. And today he is helping drive a next generation agricultural platform that combines advanced automation, digital twin AI, and controlled environment, growing to improve yields while reducing water use, waste, and emissions. And with that, come on up. Thank you.
Good morning. I'd like to thank EarthX, and a special thank you to Commissioner Miller to coaxing us into coming from New York to make this presentation. I didn't realize how much you and I have in common. But like you, I'm a very lucky man because I'm married to the same woman for 48 years also. And she is my better 7/8 because like you have to put up with us. And we also understand the use of wine to help lubricate the problem. So hats off to you, sir. My name is Dennis Levine. I am the founder and Chief Executive Officer of Water Garden Farms. I'm joined today by my colleague, Bertrand Deleuze, our Chief Financial Officer. We're going to talk today about food and data. Same land, same resources, same future. In the next 30 minutes, we're going to share what the future of agriculture looks like in Texas. Today, due to a lot of weather-related crop failures, 89% of Texas is in drought. 89%. Right now, not 2011, but right now, 89% of Texas. Soil moisture is below the 10th percentile. Reservoirs are at historic lows. Pumping cuts in Uvalde are 44%. It's not just today. This has been going on for 6 consecutive years of drought across the southern plains. Many South Texas farmers have been forced to cease operations as a result of these weather events. So let's look at the numbers. We're from New York, we're numbers guys, so we always want to think about what's the cost. The cost has been $23.6 billion in agricultural losses in Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. $23.6 billion. $2.1 billion in farm cotton losses in one drought year alone. 2,000 farms have failed as a result of this in Texas. And over the next 20 years, we may lose 70% of the Texas Panhandle farming out of the Ogallala aquifer. So let's talk about the structural changes, the 5 structural changes that we can bring to agriculture. These structural changes are existential and compounding. Let's start with water. To me, to a lot of people in the world, water is the canary in the coal mine. Only 0.7% of all Earth's water, the aquifers, oceans, rivers, streams, clouds, are available for human use in any given year. 0.7%. And of that 0.7% globally, 70% of that goes into agriculture. 70% goes into agriculture, and in the US it's 80%. So 80% of 0.7% is used for agriculture. A lot of it, pesticides, herbicides, nitrates, phosphates, the fertilizers we need to grow. These are important ingredients. So how do we do things better using less water is part of what we'll talk about today. Second, labor, very important. 415,000 applications for H-2A jobs in 2025. Only 182 were filled by domestic applicants. 182. That's extraordinary. And because we have a migrant worker force, and because of some of the policies where people are scared to come to work, it affects the productivity of our farms today. These are things we need to address. The third part, inputs. There we go, inputs. Since the Iranian war, 49% increase in urea and fertilizer problems at the Strait of Hormuz that was touched on earlier today. In addition, diesel prices are up 47%. So if we're shipping, in addition to open field production, which requires diesel fuel, if we're shipping agriculture from places like California to New York and to Texas, those truckers now have a very significant increase in production costs and in shipping costs, which will be passed on to the consumer. Our goal would be to try and reduce food inflation for people in America. Our goal, we'll talk about today, is to enhance the MAHA movement, making food healthier again, and reduce the input costs. The next one is climate. U.S. GDP has lost a third of growth in the past 25 years as a result of weather-related crop failures. Every 12 days, a $1 billion disaster hits us in the U.S. And this is something that has hit me personally. My daughter lives in Asheville, North Carolina. And 2 years ago, when Hurricane Helene hit there unexpectedly and essentially wiped out the community, with that was my daughter's house. And she swam out, barely, almost losing her life. So I thank God that she's with us today. But for those 4 or 5 days as parents, when we couldn't communicate because everything was down, we realized what impact really is as a parent, as a dad, my wife. But thank God she's okay. But it's an indication any one of us can have that adverse thing happen in their life. So we have to be prepared for that. And finally, let's talk about the supply chain. Most of the leafy greens produced in the United States come from California and Yuma, Arizona, and they're shipped cross-country. 55 to 60% of what's actually planted in California never makes it to the store shelf. Either it doesn't meet the marketing requirements in the field, or it's lost over transportation. This concentration of agriculture can't work. You need distributed growing to have efficiency in the U.S., which we'll all touch on today. 70% of the food supply in the world has to be increased by 25 years with resources that just aren't available. Most importantly, water and arable land. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Bertrand, who will show you how we do it.
Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Thank you, Commissioner, for inviting us. It's really appreciated. So here's the picture. Today you have 90% drought in Texas. You have pressure on water tables, you have pressure on inputs costs, you have pressure on labor, and you have basically pressure on land as well, because land is disappearing and being transformed for industrial use. On top of that, you have significant waste in the supply chain because there's high concentration of production in produce in California. So all that creates a perfect storm. So the question here that I would posit today is this: what does a Texan dinner table look like 10 years from now? And Water Garden Farm was built to answer that question. And this is not based on theories. This is based on proven infrastructure. This is based on throughput. And I'm going to tell you what we are specifically, because the space is crowded with things that are what we're not. We're not a vertical farm. We're not a repurposed warehouses burning LED lights to replicate sunlight. We are purpose-built infrastructure.
Can you hear me better? All right, sorry guys. So this is 540,000 square feet in West Virginia, Martinsburg. 6,100 tons of leafy green production per year. 39 million 5-ounce package units a year. One facility. There are 4 words that define why we're different. First word is zero human touch. You will never see that anywhere else in the world. As I mentioned during the video, from seating all the way to the table, no one touches the product. The first person who actually puts their hands on the produce is the consumer at home. Fully automated, seamless. Second point is sealed and climate control. We have the most advanced controlled environment in the world, no season, with stable, predictable output. We have the highest safety standard, no human touch, so you don't have post-harvest risk. We don't use any pesticides, we don't use any herbicides, we use bio-fertilizer that are soluble to be in water. And in our proof of concept that we are extremely successful, we achieved USDA organic certification, which is a very difficult feat to achieve in indoor farming. Next, please. So, we actually run, I'm going to take you under the hood now. I'm going to show you how it's done. We run our greenhouses the way Siemens run high precision manufacturing line. Siemens is our AI global strategic partner. Let me repeat that. Siemens, the company that automates the most complex industrial systems in the world, chose Water Garden Farms are their global strategic partner to deploy their AI capability in indoor farming. So how does it work? First, in the greenhouse, we have 24/7 smart control through hardware, deep spectrum analytic cameras, sensors, who evaluate the health of the plant, the yield of the plant, the inputs to make sure that they can spot any changes in real time. This data is then fed through data mining, where the computers analyze all the data, hundreds of thousands of data points that are being evaluated in real time. And Siemens, that's where they come in. They're integrating their digital twin technology. And I don't know if anybody here is familiar with digital twin. And if you are, sorry, but I'm just going to explain briefly. What a digital twin is, it's a virtual replica of a real life asset. So basically, we're able to replicate the entire greenhouse in virtual with all the millions of data points that are into the greenhouse. And this enables us to run scenarios in virtual world without affecting anything in the production, so that we optimize our growth crops, quality and yields, minimize input, minimize energy use, minimize water use, and minimize fertilizer and other things. And ultimately, the goal is to maximize operating efficiencies. And these changes are then done in real time directly into the greenhouse itself. So this is why we can say today that we have the world's most advanced technology and process integration and platform to deploy sustainable agriculture in the United States and then globally. Let me walk you through some of our impact in terms of production. Our productivity is 49 times greater per acre than open field farm. To put this in other words so that you can maybe remember it till the end of the conference, in 1 acre, we can grow 1 million pounds of leafy green annually. Salinas in California, where 90% of the production is located, grows 25,000 pounds of leafy greens per acre. And on top of that, they throw away almost half of it on site, because 47% doesn't even make market requirements. So they let it rot on the field because it doesn't meet what the market wants, which means almost half of the inputs that are used in California and Salinas are wasted. Half of the water, half of the fertilizer, half of the pesticides, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the productivity revolution that American agriculture has been waiting for. And it's here. The second thing that I want to highlight here in terms of our production impact is power. Unlike vertical farms, we do not spend incredible amount of money to pay utility bills to grow plants. We harvest the sun itself directly. You can see our facility almost as an energy capture device. We've engineered out all the flaws of vertical farming, and that's the difference between a business model that scales and one that burns through capital and generates constant losses. On the land, what we can do, which requires 490 acres in Salinas, we do in 10 acres. So here today in Texas, we're not here asking the states for its best soil or for its farmland. We're telling the states we do not need it. So now that I've talked about production, I'm going to tell you about something that most people don't know, especially city boys like us from New York City. Next one, please. So this is the current supply chain in the United States, and obviously we're in leafy greens, so I'm talking about Salinas. You have a grower that sends its produce to the pack house, that sends the produce to the distributor, then goes to the wholesaler, and finally it gets shipped to the East Coast distribution center. In New York, for us to, when we go to Whole Foods or other places and we buy lettuce, for example, this is almost 2 weeks old. So no nutrients. The product basically, this is lost in the fridge almost after a few days, and you're basically eating water. So you have an issue where you have about a product that's been touched by at least 4 entities, that travels thousands of miles, and that's been sitting in at least 3 refrigerated warehouses. And lettuce, as you know, over 90% of lettuce is made of water. So what we're doing here currently is we're shipping water from California, which relies on the Colorado River for its fresh water. 60% of California freshwater supplies comes from the Colorado River. And as I'm sure everybody knows, Colorado River is in big trouble. Lake Mead, Lake Powell, they are at the lowest point, and there's a massive risk down the road of dead pool. And 7 states are fighting for water, and the situation has not been resolved. So what we're doing here is we're shipping water from water-starved state thousands of miles to water-plaining state, and wasting almost 60% in the process. Almost half in production, and then the rest in transportation. So the sad face you're seeing here is today's consumer, paying for something that's more expensive, that's older, that's less nutritious, and that ultimately doesn't last long. Next, please. So what we're doing here at Water Garden Farms is we're basically taking all these steps and combining them seamlessly under one roof. So we remove all these touch points and we bring into one roof, which basically enhances time to market. So what takes 10 to 12 days to reach New York, for example, we can do it in 6 hours. So why is that so good? Well, it benefits the consumer, because the consumer has a superior product that's more nutritious, that was harvested 24 hours ago and not a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. And nutrition content decreases substantially after a week or so. So the consumer is getting a product that's healthier, that's organic, that is fresher, and that comes to market at a lower price point, which I will talk about later. The other thing that I want to talk about is, sorry, 1 second. Thank you. So the other thing that I want to talk about is that traditional agriculture today is facing a lot of challenges. Water, weather, labor, input costs, land, waste. So we've engineered all these issues by doing decentralized production near where the market is, but not like vertical farms, which are basically producing, let's say, produce inner city where the real estate cost is very high, where they spend almost half of revenue on energy to replicate sunlight, where the labor cost is much higher, and also where the distribution cost is significantly higher, because vertical farming in inner city, what they do is they ship directly to every single supermarket. So you have hundreds of distribution channels. In our case, the facility we have in West Virginia is an hour drive from Washington along the I-81 north-south corridor, and that facility is in development. And we're able to reach distribution center within hours. And then the DCs, not data centers, the distribution centers, do actually then take the last mile and bring it. So it optimizes distribution, it optimizes cost. So earlier I told you that we are where purpose meets performance. And here's the proof. Our carbon footprint is 86% lower than open field in Salinas. The reason why we achieved that is because we've maximized resource efficiency to the most effective level. We reduce transportation cost. We do not burn. We use 100% solar power. So everything that we're doing is a significant less carbon emission footprint, which increases extreme weather events. Next, please. The other point is waste, which I talked earlier about. Currently, Salinas loses significant amount of production on site and through transportation. By decentralizing production near the city, near distribution centers, we're able to reduce our losses from 60% to less than 1%. Hence, this KPI here. Next one. And the number that matters the most in this state is water. The production that I mentioned earlier, 1 million pounds per acre versus 25,000 pounds per acre, we're able to achieve that with 98.5 less water. So the point I want to leave in this room on that particular aspect is when you're looking in the market and you're seeing sustainability being sold as a premium, as something elitist, as something that people should pay more for, we're demonstrating that it doesn't have to be that way. What we're basically showing here is that resource efficiency enables us to reduce the cost burden that affects a lot of open field farm and also existing indoor farm because the business model is completely flawed for a vertical. And basically what we're saying here is that the sustainable solution is the superior economic solution. So this is what real sustainability performance looks like when it's built into unit economics. So we have a rare convergence of impact, innovation, and performance.
Okay. Thank you, Bertrand. Wow, you can come up for air. Okay. So what does this... I agree. He's going to ask me for a raise after this. I can hear it coming. No doubt. And you've earned it. You've earned it. So what does this mean for Texas? This is really our call to Texas. This is why we're here today. This is why we're here today. I got it. It's okay. There are 32 million people in this wonderful state. There are 320,000 farms, which is extraordinary, more than any place else in America. But yet there's a resource scarcity issue, one that we can help solve. You import almost 4 billion pounds of fresh vegetables a year. And what does that mean? Resource scarcity on one side, import dependency on the other. The second largest ag state feeding itself from somewhere else is something I think we can all help change, because self-reliance, growing food within your own borders, is a critically important issue for food security, food safety. It's actually food safety in our nation. So what we'd love to do, what we're here to promote, is to build 2 1 million square foot greenhouse capacity in Texas. This would be our next major deployment. That's our proposal on the table. It's not a slide. What Water Garden Farms will bring to Texas is as follows. Okay. Food sovereignty, 365 days a year. No weather-related crop failures. We harvest every single day. USDA organic produce. The beautiful thing about getting this product to market, I'll talk a little bit about business. Because if I look at the value chain, the most important link in that value chain is the consumer. He's number one. She's number one. They want healthy. They want organic. They want no human touch. They want locally grown. They want something that's not going to be thrown out in the fridge because it turned brown. The largest consumer of leafy greens in the United States is the trash pail. And that is something we have to stop. It's just too much waste. Water, as Bertrand pointed out, 98.5% less water, and we get 70% of that water off what's called a rainwater recapture system. We have a roof that's pitched slightly, it goes into a reservoir, it's processed, it goes into a closed loop system. I won't get into all the technology, but that's how we get to use 98.5% less water. The water that leaves our facility leaves inside the produce, and there's no waste. That's where it belongs, right to your refrigerator. Let's talk about jobs. We're not seasonal. We produce 365 days a year. So in addition to giving the produce manager at H-E-B, Whole Foods, and all the stores in Texas higher margins, because they're so margin starved, that they can pass on to the consumer, we have steady employment. Employment for engineers, design people, the people that will build the greenhouse and the construction people, and it's not a seasonal job. We give them a future. We give them a wonderful place to live, and we have a priority to hire U.S. veterans. The facility in Martinsburg in West Virginia is just down the road from a VA hospital. We've already spoken to them, and they were thrilled with the offer. It resonated. It was so grateful that it meant so much to us, because that's another component of what we have to do. So we'll have 65 jobs for 500 square feet, full-time. We use 98.5% less water. We'll have rural investment. By the way, not taking away any existing farmland. I know that's something really important, and we've seen that with the data centers, something we'll touch on in a little bit. And now I want Bertrand to talk about one step further, because there's another massive story unfolding in Texas that were touched on earlier. Okay, you got it. Thank you. You got it.
Another thing that
It's a tag team.
Hello? 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 Oh, sorry. So another thing that, we'd like to posit as well here is, our ethos is to inspire change in a positive way in the world, in society, in people. And the way we do that is by optimizing the way we do business. So we optimize from a sustainability standpoint to preserve Mother Nature. We optimize also from an economic standpoint and based on unit economics, because to really make change in the world at scale, in today's world, you need capital. There's no other way. And the only way to drive capital is by showing how performance from a financial standpoint is. And that's what we've achieved. The other thing, and I want to close on this as well, is there's the environmental, there's the economic, but there's the social. And for us, what Dennis touched on the veterans, our goal is to bring a product at a lower price to market. And the reason why we can do that is because we have the lowest cost production in the world. And the reason we're doing this is to bring food to people who deserve it. Because healthy food should not be only for several types of people. It should be for everybody. So our ability to bring local, fresh produce at the lower price points, and also is something that we really care about. The other thing too is we're really keen in supporting communities that are suffering. We've started engaging in West Virginia with food banks, with schools, and we had discussion with some organization on how we can strategically deploy some production towards food deserts. And one thing I didn't realize is in Houston, there are food deserts. I thought food deserts was somewhere in the middle of the nature, but no, there's actually food deserts in cities. So, churches, for instance, is a great way to bring produce and bring food to these communities. So this is something we really, really care about. And now let's have a chat about the data centers, because that's the elephant in the room. We've heard earlier this morning how data centers are taking land, how data centers are creating a lot of pressure on the load. And today you have Texas, which is one of the fastest growing data center market in the world, and that's projected to be the largest data center market in the world. And let's pause for that. This is a major economic triumph globally in the race for AI. ERCOT is currently allocating 10% of the grid load for the 400 plus data centers currently operating. But in the next 6 years, the projection is that the grid load is projected to be 50% at current levels. So there's significant need for power to do that. The challenge is today there's not power. That's why you have, people are trying to figure out quickly how to support that. That's why today now you have hyperscalers saying, okay, well, we're going to bring our own power. We're going to develop, co-location. Distributed generation on site, so we don't take the load from the grid. But these things, are challenging. So you have a massive infrastructure boom in data centers happening alongside a massive crisis in terms of food security, with extreme weather events, supply chain disruption, et cetera, and significant issues in terms of water. So, the one thing that I touched on a couple months ago in New York during the CFA symposium on sustainability was the fact that we've been probably witnessing the largest misallocation of capital in recent history. Hundreds of billions of dollars have been going into data centers, but without thinking through the supply chain, energy, power. So this is a major situation because data centers don't just consume electricity, they also consume water. So, obviously, as mentioned, the Texans are concerned by rising energy prices, fertile farmland loss, depleting water resources, price, day-to-day, life inflation. Please. So, everybody talks about the energy gap, but the binding constraint here is really water. Water is a constraint on data center. Water is a constraint on Texas agriculture. Water is a constraint on Texas economy. And Texas is relying on two systems for its food. I'm talking about fresh produce here. One is Colorado River, which we know is significantly under pressure, and we're facing a slow death in real time. On the other, you have the Ogallala, which also is in increasing pressure. And you have these two most precious resources, and there's this hype in the markets about rare earth minerals, about AI, about the next computing level. But really, when we think about it, what does that matter in a way if you don't have the water to even give to your children and to yourself and to live, because this is the foundation of life. So this is the most undervalued resource and the most overlooked resource until today. And now people are starting to understand. Commissioner Miller has been a major leader in spearheading this effort in terms of water conservation and raising voice about this issue. And I think we need more of that across the nation because this is not only a US problem, but it's also a global problem. We have discussion with parties around the world. India, for example, which is tremendous under pressure. We have issues in the Middle East, as you know, especially with critical infrastructure because they rely on desalination, and with the war, you see how risky the access of water can be on society. So let's look at some numbers here. Today, 25 billion gallons of water are used per day for data centers. In 6 years, the projection is six-fold increase. And based on current planning, there's a gap of 10% that's being forecasted. So, please. So to give you some sort of comparison here, 1 gigawatt data center consumes up to 21 million gallons of water per day. Please. That's equivalent to a city of 200,000 people. So this is a national security issue. Texas sense it. Rising energy price, farmland converted into industrial, water tables dropping, communities asking, what are we getting out of this? The conventional framing would be to look at this as a zero-sum fight. Data centers against agriculture. Compute versus crops. Silicon versus seed. But it doesn't have to be that way. And we're here today to demonstrate how, by designing infrastructure in a smart way and combining indoor farming together with data center development, we can address a lot of these issues.
Okay, I'd like you all to take a look at the screen, because what you see there is a co-location infrastructure solution. This is truly the future of blending together the surge in data centers, because whether we like it or not, AI is here, hyperscalers are here. We're in a battle with China. We are going to win this battle because I believe this is the greatest country in the world, and we can solve any problems with ingenuity and technology. And when we look at the problems of water, and when we look at the problems of data centers, they are inexorably attached to each other. A 1 million square foot greenhouse facility reduces water consumption for a 30 megawatt data center example by 75%. But it's not just that. It's the CO2 transfer. We exhaust captured and purified air shipped to our greenhouse. Plants absorb the CO2 and release O2. Now, I'm going to ask all of you to remember your high school biology. I'm sure you got this one, Commissioner. Photosynthesis. So CO2 in, plant nourishment out, and oxygen. This is an absolute win for the lack of CO2 reduced into the air and the benefits to the greenhouse. Heat exchange. Server waste, heat warms greenhouses, and we stop burning gas. Another win for the environment, reducing our operating expenses and enhancing productivity. The water savings are dramatic. Condensed cooling, water filtered, reused irrigation. This is an absolute next generation win. Less electricity. The grid is already strained. We heard that earlier today. Heat reuse cuts cooling load, lowers the power, and lowers the emissions. In Europe, this is a reality. It's happening now. We want to make sure it happens here. The picture in the front shows a hyperscale greenhouse. The picture in the back, a hyperscale data center. The picture in the back is what our greenhouses look like. All the connections are real. They can happen today, and they should be happening here in Texas. Everyone benefits. The co-location model turns the data center boom from a threat to agricultural water into a partner for agricultural development. The data center improves energy efficiency, cost savings on cooling, water positive credits, and most importantly, community goodwill. That whole political backlash that everyone in Texas is feeling now, that people talked about earlier, is mitigated by a solution that addresses both the agricultural problem, the power problem, the location problem, and the data center problem. The greenhouse uses free waste heat from the data center. 98.5% less water. That saves water in Texas. Zero greenhouse gas from heating. That saves the environmental impact. And local USDA organic food delivered to Texans 365 days a year, including schools and including food banks. The state of Texas saves water resources, develops food self-reliance, which is critically important, creates jobs, and a diversified economy. The people of Texas get local organic produce every single day, have diversified employment, made in Texas, visible sustainability. Water Garden Farms is building the future of agriculture. Commissioner, everyone in this room, we want to build it here. We have no doubt that this is the right place. You touched on how much international travel you have, and I noticed your wife grimaced when you said it. But the reality is, this isn't just a Texas problem. This isn't just a U.S. problem. This is a global problem. We live in the most blessed country in the world, but we're only 5% of the world's population. Every day on this planet, 2 billion people go to sleep malnourished, looking for water. Water is a precious resource, and as 2 billion more people come on the planet, how do we deal with a finite resource and feed them? So in 10 to 15 years, we're looking at real climate migration, real starvation, people dying from these issues. I believe that the nucleus for future production lies right here in Texas, globally. We could do it here, we can build it here, we could set the example, and I would consider this my clarion call to all of you to say, let's get it done, let's build it. And I want to thank you so much for the invitation to be here today, share these thoughts and ideas with you, and we'd be honored to take any questions that you have. It's premature because we have to coordinate with the commissioner and the Department of Agriculture. The goal is to make sure we don't build these things on existing farmland. We have to preserve that. What we do is important, but what every farmer in the world does is important. We all need to find better ways to produce food on our planet. open field, indoor. I mean, I look at, for example, the Netherlands. They have a footprint the size of Maryland, but yet they're the world's second largest exporter of agricultural products. One word, efficiency, greenhouse. That's 2 words, but greenhouses. So we didn't reinvent the wheel. We just figured out who does it the best. We brought it here, we made it better. The idea now of co-locating in the United States with major hyperscalers and data centers is it's a win-win, a no-lose. It's most importantly for the people, but for society and the environment. So we look forward to coordinating that with the politics here, with the Department of Agriculture, and doing it elsewhere, but leading here.
I agree with Dennis. I think, we have to really think creatively because, everybody's looking at their own sort of vertical. I'm doing this, he's doing this. Everybody's very sort of like, that's just, the way life is, I guess. But we need to really start thinking outside the box. And this is a key solutions that can really address issues that affect not only every stakeholders, municipalities, states, environment, people, economy. So agree with Dennis. I think this is critical, and the way we're going to develop this is going to be very thoughtful. We'll walk before we run, because I think a lot of failures that we've seen, and I'm talking about our space indoor farming, was done because the first mover in the United States in vertical farming did not think through the economics, did not think through what am I addressing on the supply chain. And this is where we really cracked the code, because when you find a model, whatever, it could be business or anything else, that solves the pain points at every level, that's where you really create change. So it's very important for us to be creative and combine overlaps in terms of collocation.
I just want to point something out. What just happened is very rare. He agreed with me. He absolutely agreed with me. Now, he's not a yes man, and nobody at Water Garden Farms is a yes man, and I like that because they're constantly challenging the status quo. We're constantly pushing the envelope. We're looking for better ways to do things. So he was being very polite to me today, and I really appreciate that. Thank you. Any other questions, please? That's a possibility. We don't believe, and nor do we want to have any adverse effect on open field farming. What we consider this is a supplement to open field farming. Also, there's a big wave in the world now towards regenerative agriculture. So when you think of the thousands and thousands of acres that we can save by moving some of this production indoors, it gives that soil an opportunity to regenerate. It gives open field farmers a better option to produce food on a go-forward basis. Please.
Just to add something in terms of, to complete the question, the key in locating facilities is based on multiple factors. Farmland, obviously we don't want to affect local communities, but also what's critical is logistics. What's very important for us is to be located in places where we have access to highway so that we can bring product to market efficiently within hours, and that's why we are strategically locating our facilities next to distribution centers of retailers. Obviously, there's other consideration, grid access, grid load, water, etc. But that's one of the major drivers.
Okay, our goal is to build 6 of these facilities in the United States over the next 2 to 3 years. My hope and my belief is that development cadence can be accelerated by some of the things we could do here in Texas. But at that point, when we have 6 facilities operating, we would account for about 1.5% of the U.S. leafy green production. So it's quite manageable. Absolutely, we can. Indoor farming is not only known for leafy greens, but we can grow tomatoes, peppers, and I think I had too many of those at the Mexican restaurant last night. Cucumbers, vine crops as well. Sure.
Another thought here on your question. Our facility right now, we're focusing on leafy greens. We have the ability to change crops very quickly. The crop rotation is 20 days, 21 days. So let's say Whole Foods or your local retailer says, you know what, we don't want leafy green, we don't want baby lettuce anymore, we want spinach. Within 3 weeks, we can shift the production to spinach. How long does it take an open field farm to switch production? 1 year. Exactly. So we can also be very reactive with market changes.
We completed our test several years ago. And we pivoted to build something. In the first one, we grew whole heads of lettuce because we wanted to prove out different varieties, logistics, operations, and most importantly, getting a USDA organic certification in the greenhouse. Not an easy feat. Now, this is a business decision. A whole head is 10 to 12 ounces. A packet salad is 5 ounces. So for one head, I get 2 for 1. It creates efficiency, higher profitability. It's what the consumer wants. They want convenience. We can mix and match all different varieties, red leaf, green leaf, frisee, spinach, kale, whatever the consumer market wants. Within 20 days, we can shift it. It'll be right on the store shelf. Sure. We have a whole site selection criteria and a team that does that for us. From a logistics perspective, as Bertrand pointed out, we look for access to market, access to water, access to power, access to gas, and all the things that are potential inputs. We also want the closest distance from our facility to the major distribution centers of retail chains, letting them go the last mile. There are other factors that come into that as well, including economic incentives, the welcoming. I'll tell you one thing that's for sure, and I thank you for this. Texas is a real welcoming state. I mean, they love business. And I can understand why a lot of my friends from New York are moving here. I'm sure that's going to be the next step for you, Commissioner, getting us to move down here and set our headquarters up. Come on down. I know. Come on down. I know the language. But there are major issues that go into this, mostly engineering and design. Meteorological conditions. For example, you don't want to be in a flood zone, so we have to look at flood zone history. You don't want to be, somebody said, why don't we build it in Miami? I said, sure. And when the next hurricane comes in, a glass greenhouse is, I think we're back in Kansas, is sort of what we'll hear from Dorothy. Not happening. So we're very selective. And frankly, we say no more than we say yes, because the criteria is rigid, and that's why the success is there.
This plan of co-location is a sprout about to grow, right? So there's significant potential. Obviously, we are developing the plan design, but the conversation haven't formally started, but this is something that we're actively looking into. But I want to bring back the subject. Right now, our eyes are focused on West Virginia and finishing the build-out of West Virginia, because this is going to be the flagship and so like a showroom for the world.
Anything else? Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.